Okay, picture the scene. It's early January 2026.
Right.
The holidays are over. Reality is, setting back in. And the lights go down in this auditorium. And it is packed with the absolute elite of the tech world.
Mm-hmm.
Two men walk onto the stage, and the whole room it shifts. You can feel the gravity.
It's not often you get the heavyweights in the same ring.
Exactly. On one side, you have Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic.
Okay.
On the other, Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind, the moderator, who looked like he just won the lottery by being there. He called it the Beatles and Rolling Stones of AI getting the band back together.
Which honestly might be underselling it.
It really might be, considering what they talked about.
It's a reunion tour, but for the people who are actually architecting the future of intelligence.
And the context here is everything. Because just a year ago, back in 2025, they were on similar stages making these wild sci-fi predictions about where we'd be.
And now we're here checking the receipts.
We're here. And the session was titled The Day After AGI.
Which is a heavy title. It implies we're close enough to the event horizon that we need to start planning for what happens when we wake up the next morning.
That is exactly the vibe. It wasn't if anymore, it was when and how fast.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive is to cut through all the hype and really look at what they said.
Mm-hmm.
We need to answer three massive questions that came out of this. First, how close are we really to artificial general intelligence?
Okay.
Second, what is this self-improvement loop that everyone is suddenly betting the farm on?
Yeah.
And third, and this is the one that really got me, what's the missing ingredient? Because for all the progress, there's still a gap between a chatbot that can pass the bar exam and a digital scientist that can win a Nobel Prize.
A digital Nobel Laureate. I love that framing. So let's jump in. The atmosphere in that room, it wasn't just, hey, look at our cool new product.
No.
It felt like two generals comparing notes on an arms race that just entered a terrifying new gear. It has entered a new gear. And to understand why, you have to get the mechanic driving it. For the last, decade, AI progress was pretty linear. Humans collected data, humans labeled it, humans wrote the code.
Slow, messy, human speed.
Exactly. But what Amodei and Hassabis were discussing is this self-improvement loop. We are transitioning to a phase where the AI models themselves are writing the code and conducting the research to produce the next generation of models.
Recursion. The tool builds the better tool.
Precisely. And this isn't theoretical anymore. This was the moment in the transcript where I actually put my cocky down.
Okay.
Dario Amodei shared a detail from inside Anthropic that is just wild. He said his own engineers, some of the best coders on the planet, are telling him, I don't write code anymore.
That is mind-blowing. These are the people building the machine, and they've stopped coding.
They've promoted themselves. They're senior editors now.
Wow.
They described the problem, the model writes the code, the model writes the tests, the model implements it, the human just checks the work.
So they're just curators.
Pretty much. And Amodei predicts that within 6 to 12 months, so basically by the time you're hearing this, or very shortly after, AI models will be doing the vast majority of end-to-end software engineering tasks.
So let's play that out. If the AI is writing its own code, and it doesn't need to sleep, and it doesn't need coffee breaks,
then the development curve goes vertical. That's the loop. Once the loop closes, meaning the AI can improve its own architecture without a human needing to fix its typos,
right,
progress becomes exponential. That is why Amodei is so incredibly bullish on the timeline.
Okay.
He is standing by his prediction that we could see models with Nobel Laureate capabilities across multiple fields as early as this year, 2026 or 2027.
2026 or 2027, we're talking about now. That is so aggressive.
It is, but he's seeing the internal metrics. When the machine becomes the engineer, the constraints of human time just dissolve.
Now, Demis Hassabis, the DeepMind guy, he seemed to be, I don't know, tapping the brakes a little bit, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't quite as ready to declare mission accomplished.
Hassabis is a scientist at heart. He's a bit more cautious. He puts the odds of full AGI, meaning a system that creates, a real discontinuity in history, at about 50% by the end of the decade.
So maybe 2029 or 2030?
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, is still blisteringly fast in historical terms.
Oh, it's lightning fast. But he thinks there are hurdles that the loop can't just speed run through. And we should probably touch on the competitive dynamic here,
right,
because it matters. A year ago, the narrative was that Google was lagging. OpenAI and DeepSeek were the cool kids.
Right. Google felt like the sleeping giant that refused to wake up.
Well, the giant is awake. Hassabis mentioned declaring a code red internally.
Oh.
And with the release of Gemini 3, they feel they are back at the top of the leaderboard. It's a good reminder that in this field, 6 months is a lifetime. You can be obsolete in January and dominant in July.
Okay, so we have this self-improvement loop.
Mm.
The engine is revving. The AI codes better, which makes a smarter AI, which codes even better. It sounds like a perpetual motion machine of intelligence.
Yeah,
But this brings me to the question I keep shouting at my screen, and I know you're thinking it too.
go for it.
If these things are so smart, if they are potentially Nobel Laureate smart in 2026, why don't we have a cure for cancer today?
Mm.
Why are we still dealing with the same old problems? Why isn't the world changing as fast as the code?
This is the crux of the entire discussion. This is the conflict between digital speed and physical speed.
Break that down for us.
Okay, think about the domain of coding or math. It's entirely digital. It lives in the abstract.
Sure.
If an AI writes a piece of Python code, it can run that code instantly. It gets an error message or a success flag in milliseconds. The feedback loop is immediate. It's a closed system.
Right. If it compiles, it works. The AI learns, iterates, moves on.
Exactly. Now, apply that to biology.
Yeah.
Apply that to material science. Let's say the superintelligent AI predicts a new chemical compound that could cure a specific type of tumor.
Okay, it has the formula.
But you can't just run the formula on a server. You have to synthesize the chemical in a lab. You have to put it in a petri dish. You have to test it on mice. Then you have to test it on humans. That process takes months, sometimes years.
That's the wet lab problem.
Hassabis calls it verification lag. In the natural sciences, you hit a hard wall called physical time.
Right.
You can have a superintelligence generating 1 million brilliant hypotheses a minute. It could solve every disease on paper in an hour. But if reality takes 6 months to verify one of those hypotheses...
Then your progress is throttled by the physical world.
Exactly.
Hassabis used the word messiness, which I thought was perfect. Robotics, biology, physics, they are messy. You have hardware in the loop.
Right.
You can't just simulate your way out of it perfectly because, we don't understand the physics well enough to simulate it perfectly yet.
And that's the insight. The timeline for superintelligent coding is going to be much, much faster than the timeline for curing disease.
That's faster.
Not because the AI isn't smart enough, but because the physical world is just slow and stubborn. The software can self-improve infinitely, but eventually it slams into the bottleneck of reality.
So we're going to have godlike coders while we're still waiting for the lab results to come back. That is a frustrating image.
It creates a disconnect. We might see a digital singularity long before we see a biological one.
But there's another layer to this, right? It's not just about waiting for the test tubes. There's a question about whether the AI can even come up with the right ideas in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they started talking about the missing ingredient.
This is the distinction between a solver and a creator. And this is where we get into the real limitations of the current tech.
Okay, unpack that. Because to me, GPT-5 or Gemini-3 seems pretty creative. It writes poetry, it hallucinates weird stories.
It's creative in a remix sense.
Mm-hmm.
Current large language models are incredible solvers. If you give them a conjecture or a coding problem or a math proof, they can navigate the patterns they've learned to find the solution. But Hassabis, who, remember, has a background in neuroscience, he points out that the highest level of scientific creativity is something else entirely.
It's not answering the question.
No?
It's asking it.
Exactly. It's the ability to look at a chaotic set of phenomena, like the movement of the planets before we understood orbits, and say, wait, I think there's a hidden law of physics here, and then formulate a completely new hypothesis. That requires stepping outside the training data.
So currently, they can interpolate, they can fill in the gaps between things we already know,
Right.
but they can't extrapolate to discover a new continent of knowledge.
Generally, yes. They are derivative. Brilliant, but derivative. So the question becomes, how do we bridge that gap? If the self-improvement loop just makes them faster solvers, how do we get a creator?
And this is where Hassabis brought up Plan B.
Plan B involves world models.
We hear this term thrown around in the research papers, world models. What does it actually mean in this context? How is it different from the chatbot we use today?
A language model predicts the next token. It knows that apple often follows eat. It understands the statistical relationship between words,
Okay.
a world model. It creates an internal representation of how physical reality operates.
It understands cause and effect.
Right. It understands that if I drop a glass, it falls because of gravity, and it shatters because glass is brittle and the floor is hard. It doesn't just read about gravity, It simulates the physics.
You can run a simulation in his head.
Exactly. And Hassabis believes that if we want AI to navigate that messy physical world we talked about, to do robotics, to do real science, we have to crack world models. We need systems that can simulate a future state of the world to test a hypothesis inside their imagination before they try it in the real world.
It's like the difference between a student who memorized the textbook and a scientist who understands the principles deep enough to write a new chapter.
That is the perfect analogy. The self-improvement loop gives us the ultimate student who memorized the library. World models gives us the scientist who can expand the library.
I want to pivot here. We've covered the tech, the loop, the lag, the world models.
Right.
But while these guys are debating verification lags, the rest of us are trying to figure out if we're going to have a paycheck in 2027.
The impact on labor. This was the darker part of the conversation.
Dario Amodei has this essay, Machines of Loving Grace, which, by the way, sounds like a hippie anthem.
It's a very poetic title for a very serious document.
It is. And parts of it are incredibly optimistic. He paints this picture of AI as a genius of data that eradicates tropical diseases, extends human lifespan, basically fixes the human condition. It's the Star Trek future.
Right.
But
There's always a but.
then he starts talking about the labor market. And he did not sugarcoat it. He stood by his prediction that half of entry-level white-collar jobs could be gone in 1 to 5 years.
1 to 5.
Not 50 years, 1 to 5.
That is a staggering number. And what's chilling is the anecdote he shared from his own company. He said that even within Anthropic, as the models get better, they might need fewer junior people, not more.
That hits home. Usually when a company grows, you hire more juniors to support the seniors. You build a pyramid. He's saying the pyramid is inverting.
Because the AI is the junior, it's the intern, it's the entry-level analyst, it's the paralegal.
Wow.
Why hire a human junior who needs training and sleep and health insurance when the model can do the grunt work instantly and perfectly?
But this breaks the career ladder, doesn't it? If you never hire juniors, how do they become seniors? Where do the next experts come from?
That's the junior gap. If the bottom rung of the ladder is automated, the whole mechanism of skill transfer just breaks down. And economically, it challenges the traditional view that technology always creates new jobs.
Yeah.
It might create new jobs eventually, but if the replacement happens in 24 months because of that exponential loop, society cannot adapt that fast.
It's the speed again. The verification lag applies to humans, too. It takes us years to retrain. It takes the AI seconds to download a new capability.
Exactly. The disruption happens at digital speed, but human adaptation happens at physical speed.
And it's not just jobs, it's national security. There was a moment in the discussion about chips, the export bans, the U.S. trying to stop China from getting the high-end GPUs.
This was Amodei being incredibly blunt.
Yeah, he compared selling advanced chips to China, not to telecoms competition, but to selling nuclear weapons to North Korea because it generates profit for Boeing.
It's a stark analogy. He's framing compute power, these chips, as equivalent to fissile material.
Right.
It's not a commercial product. It's a state-level weapon. If AGI is the ultimate strategic asset, then the hardware that runs it is the most controlled substance on Earth.
And yet the current policy, as mentioned in the transcript, is also about binding countries into supply chains, which means selling them the chips. Amodei is basically saying you are out of your minds.
It highlights the tension. On one hand, you have companies needing revenue. On the other, you have this belief that whoever gets to AGI first wins everything, or potentially threatens everything.
Which brings us to the societal response. If people start losing jobs and they see these companies building nuclear-level tech, why aren't they grabbing pitchforks?
Hassabis argues that the tech industry is on thin ice. He says they have to demonstrate unequivocal good.
Unequivocal good.
Meaning you can't just give us a better chatbot and take our jobs. You have to cure cancer. You have to map every protein in the body, which DeepMind did with AlphaFold.
Right.
He's arguing that things like isomorphic, their spin out for drug discovery, are the rent they have to pay to society to justify the disruption they're causing.
That's a heavy burden. It's a grand bargain. Sorry we automated your department, but here's a cure from malaria.
It's a trade-off, and the question is whether the cure arrives before the unemployment crisis does. Remember that verification lag? The jobs might vanish at digital speed, but the cures arrive at physical speed.
Wow. That's the danger zone, the gap of discontent.
That's a very real risk window, a period of high turbulence where the old world is breaking, but the benefits of the new world haven't arrived yet.
Speaking of risk, we have to talk about the ending, the Q&A. Someone in the audience brings up the Fermi paradox.
The classic question, if the universe is so old and so big, where are all the aliens?
Right, the fear, the doomer view is the great filter. The idea that advanced civilizations inevitably invent a technology that destroys them before they can leave their home planet.
Mhm.
That AI is the great filter.
It's the ultimate existential dread. But I loved how they handled this.
Yeah.
Amodei referenced the movie Contact.
How did you survive your technological adolescence?
That's the line. He views humanity as being in its adolescence right now. We have found the matches, nuclear weapons, AI, bioengineering, but we haven't grown up enough to know how to handle them safely yet.
But they rejected the idea that destruction is inevitable.
They did. They are optimists. They believe we can navigate it. But it requires acknowledging that we are currently unsupervised teenagers playing with fire.
So, putting it all together, we have a self-improvement loop that is about to close, potentially accelerating AI to Nobel levels in a year or two. We have a physical reality that is messy and slow, creating a lag between the digital brain and the real-world cure.
Yep.
And we have a race to build world models, so these things can actually understand the physics of the reality they're trying to fix.
That's the synthesis. We are building the engine, that's the loop.
Right.
But we desperately need the steering wheel, that's the world model. Without the steering wheel, we're just moving very fast in a direction we might not control.
And as we move from solvers to creators, the relationship changes.
It does. And this raises an important question for everyone listening. We are moving from an era where humans ask questions and AI answers them, to an era where AI might ask the questions we didn't even know we had.
That's the part that sticks with me.
Think about it. If an AI generates a hypothesis about physics that is so complex, so novel, that we are too slow to physically verify it, who is actually leading the discovery process?
Right.
Are we the scientists anymore, or are we just the lab assistants running around trying to prove the machine's theories?
We become the hands for the digital brain.
We become the hands.
Well, on that slightly existential note, I think we'll wrap it up there. It's going to be a wild few years.
Absolutely. Keep watching The Loop.
Thanks for taking the dive with us. Stay curious, everyone.